Dabo Swinney calls out Pete Golding and Ole Miss for tampering, and he's absolutely right to do so.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view every day. It is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, the number one sports podcast network out there. Thank you all so much, especially my everydayers, for helping make that the case. We just hit 19,000 subscribers on YouTube, plenty more on podcast as well. Appreciate you all. I also appreciate the 12-team playoff is here for at least one more season. Darian Mensah, a return to Duke. I don't know, man. This episode brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Maybe you want to take my Seahawks minus 4.5, according to our friends at FanDuel, against the Patriots. Go Hawks. Okay, this is a college football show. I got to keep it there. Couldn't miss that opportunity, though. Dabo Swinney did not miss an opportunity to call out Pete Golding and Ole Miss. Got the text that he was reading from an agent, someone involved with the situation, saying, quote, "It's just what Pete Golding does." This is all surrounding, if you've been under a rock for the last 36 to 48 hours, Luke Ferrelli, a transfer linebacker that has a couple years of eligibility left, which we learned because that was part of the offer that Ole Miss made to him. He's going to the Rebels. Now, I have spoken many a times on this show about tampering and said it is the biggest nothing word that you have ever heard. Everybody is doing it. There's no way to really police it. This, however, is a completely different circumstance, because what I have spoken about in the past, and the most typical use of the word tampering in college football, is coaches or players or agents reaching out or talking to players who are a part of a roster for a team whose season is still ongoing. That is the general colloquial term. What we've got here, and why I am on Dabo Swinney's side of this scenario, Ole Miss fans, I don't hate you, I love you. You guys going to the semifinal, one of my favorite stories in college football. Trinidad Shambliss, well, that's a discussion for a different day. Might be getting another year, but I love Trinidad Shambliss. This is not me saying I hate Ole Miss or I hate the SEC. This is just reading the facts of the situation and saying, yeah, okay, this is wrong. Because it's one thing to have what took place at Nebraska with Kenny Minchey. He transferred from Notre Dame, backup quarterback. He verbally commits to Nebraska and then flips. Well, that trend in college football isn't actually brand new. It's kind of new in the portal space. You don't see it quite as often, but there are a handful of examples out there. And while it feels not great, it feels a little, that's not exactly what we were hoping for. It doesn't feel like an earth-shattering sort of dramatic situation that causes one coach to call out the others. Nebraska's okay, by the way. They went and got Anthony Calandria, Mountain West Player of the Year, who's got Power 4 experience coming over from UNLV. So the reason that I have an issue with what happened here and why I am on Clemson's side of this is that Luke Ferrelli had transferred to Clemson, had enrolled in classes, and then the portal had closed. You can exit the portal at any time, and I'm not privy to the minutiae and tiny details of how, the wording gets put out or used. I don't even know how he's allowed to re-enter the portal when the portal has closed. Dabo Swinney and his staff went through the process of recruiting him in the transfer portal to come play linebacker. And after he was on the team, enrolled in classes at Clemson, and then the portal closed, and somehow he's able to make his way to Ole Miss. Obviously, there's a loophole somewhere, because this doesn't have the sort of legal hang-up that, say, Darian Mensah, who I'll give you an update on later on today's show, has, where he's waiting to see if he's going to be allowed. No, this has happened. This has happened. And this should not be allowed to happen. Once you say the portal's closed, if you are not in by that deadline, that's got to be it. And this goes back to a fundamental problem. I know I'm not the first one to point out this issue in the sport, but it's going to be worth repeating as long as there hasn't been a solution on the matter. There is no overarching governing body or individual in college football, and there needs to be. Someone has to be told that they're breaking the rules and you can't do that. And the NCAA feels ridiculously toothless at this point in time. And so that Ole Miss is allowed to take a guy that Clemson already signed, enrolled, portal closed. Clemson can't go out and get somebody of the same caliber. They might be able to find a player. There's still thousands of players available in the transfer portal. Not one as good as Luke Ferrelli. And Dabo Swinney's got to be looking at this going, what am I supposed to do here? How is this the world? Because he's the guy that's been anti-portal. He's the guy that said, nope, we're doing it the Clemson way, we're doing it our way. And he's seen now, okay, this has happened at Stanford with Andrew Luck coming in to take over that program as well. They've realized, okay, we actually can't do it this way. We can't just recruit high school kids. We're at a competitive disadvantage. Okay, let me go in the portal. And Dabo Swinney has to be thinking to himself while vocalizing his frustrations, justifiably so. He has to be looking around going, I told you so. This is why we haven't done this. This is why we don't do it. Because everybody's a mercenary in his view. That's certainly the way that it feels. If you've ever seen the movie X-Men First Class, it's one of the best superhero movies of all time. It is definitely, for superhero films, inside my top 5 all time. The writing is exceptional. There is a debate between Charles Xavier and Eric Lancher, Professor X and Magneto, younger versions of themselves, about how to view humans, people that are not mutants. And there's a really great line where Magneto tells Professor X, you think they're all like Moira. And he responds, you think they're all like Shaw. And I think there is that bit of conflict in some corners of the college football space because Dabo Swinney's got to look at this and go, I tried to play the game. We had him. He was here. He was in classes. How is this allowed? And he went out and read text messages and emails and communications and laid out the timeline of when Ole Miss was reaching out, and then Ole Miss upped their offer, and now he winds up going to be an Ole Miss Rebel. No, that's not good for the sport. It absolutely is not. Contracts have to mean something. If you actually sign somewhere, people get upset, oh man, this kid flipped his commitment. He was only ever verbally committed. It's why people like myself, shows like this one and many others, are pretty active on and around National Signing Day. Because when you actually put pen to paper, that's when it becomes 100% official. Now, players can shut down their recruitments and they can, say, I'm not going anywhere else. I'm done taking visits and all that sort of stuff. And that's good and fine. Until pen is actually put to paper, you don't have a binding contract with the kid. So I think in a perfect world, whether you're bringing in a transfer, and look, Ole Miss has apparently got him on a 2-year, $2 million deal. Top of the market price, by the way, for a linebacker of all positions. It's not uncommon for a position player to get that much money. But man, a linebacker, that plays some pretty high expectations over there for the young man now in Oxford, Mississippi. And there has to be a binding element to it. I don't know who's enforcing that. The NCAA? No. Conferences? No. College football playoff? No. There's no one for it. So I don't know that there's an immediate solution. I am absolutely positively on Clemson's side of this particular debate. If a kid had committed to you and the portal was still open, that's one thing. I don't love it, but that's okay. The portal had already closed. How's he able to go in? What do you even have the rules and guidelines for? I don't know the answer to that particular question. What I do know is that whether you're talking about Damon Williams, who was going to leave Washington, or Darian Mensah, again, talking about him later, signed a 2-year deal to be with Duke for a couple of seasons, it's got to mean something. It's got to mean something. And if the way to fix this one day is to declare these kids employees and have them collectively bargain so that there's a binding arrangement, so be it. But man, you will lose, I think more than anything, and we've already seen this to an extent, coaches will throw in the towel. Great coaches will throw in the towel. And it's not healthy for the overall psyche and long-term success of the sport if kids can sign somewhere and then somehow just get out of it. That's got to stop. So leave your thoughts in the comments below. Hit me up on Twitter, however you want to get in touch. Speaking of national stories in the sport, the 12-team playoff is here. That's good, but we need more. First, this episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60 with my Seattle Seahawks and the New England Patriots, and FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. It opened, and I have got 3 witnesses to this, at a number I predicted Seahawks minus 4.5. Now, which side of that would I take? I'm not going to tell you because that might get in your head. Is this the time Spencer's actually right? Is he as ice cold with NFL picks as with college picks as he's been? I'm not telling you right now. But if you think you know how it's going down, maybe you think the Seahawks are rolling. Maybe you think the Seahawks are going to Super Bowl 48 this against the Broncos. 43-8 was the final score. If you think that's the way it goes down, then guess what? FanDuel's the place to go. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count because after the Super Bowl, the season is over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. The 12-team playoff is sticking around for at least one more year. Okay, that's great. That's good. I am happy about that. If I had my way as college football commissioner, Luke Ferrelli would be a linebacker at Clemson, and we'd have probably an 8-team playoff. But, if I wasn't allowed to contract it down, then we'd go with 12 teams for the rest of time. Now, the reason that I think this is a good move for college football is every time you expand the playoff, you dilute the value of the regular season. Now, the number of quality teams this past year allowed for what I found to still be an acceptable level of week-to-week urgency and a must-win this game sort of mentality that exists in college football in a way that it never has in the NFL. And frankly, never will. Because the NFL allows for a significant amount of flexibility for teams. And look, I'm not telling you the NFL stinks. I'm rocking my Seahawks jersey today. I watched the entire game. I've been watching every single week. College football's always been different. And this is a fundamental disagreement that many of you have with me. And that's okay. That's okay. We view the world of college football differently. I will still, after everything that has happened, sit here and tell you that I don't think Miami should have been in the playoff. They were not in my final 12-team playoff field based on the criteria that was laid out this season. Now, if I had picked the 12 teams myself based on any criteria I want with no automatic qualifiers, then guess what? Miami would have been in the field. So would Notre Dame. And you would not have had Tulane, and you would not have had James Madison in there either. So the fundamental disagreement I have with some of you, which I enjoy and can appreciate, I hope you can appreciate my perspective as well, is that I want the regular season games to matter as much as possible. You look at the 12-team playoff, some of you, I should not say all of you, you look at the 12-team playoff and say that's what it's all about. But I don't think that is what it's all about. It's never what has made college football great. It's the fact that it's almost felt like a 12 to 13 week or game playoff throughout the course of the entire year. That one loss could indeed, by itself, end your season. Nothing else has ever had that. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Was the playoff fun? Yes. Yes. More home playoff games, please. There are a number of changes that I would still like to see. But fundamentally, not that often do I get to come on here and talk to you all about news regarding changes in the sport that I'm actually happy with. Well, this isn't a change so much as a lack of a change, but still, I'm going to take it and say, you know what? Thumbs up. Not expanding the playoff. Now, the reason the playoff isn't expanding is, wait for it, the SEC and the Big Ten couldn't decide on how many teams to put in. Tony Petitti might just secretly want the playoff to stay at 12 teams. I don't know that that's the case. It might be the case. Because suggesting a 24-team play, they're 8 teams apart, 50% of the field. The SEC was reportedly advocating for a 16-team playoff. And the Big Ten wants 24. That's a crazy number of teams to be a part on. 50%. The Big Ten looks at the SEC model and says, I want 50% more teams than what you're proposing. They couldn't agree. They keep it at 12. Okay. Now, the thing that stinks about this is overall good news. I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer here. I'm just also pointing out that, as Brett McMurphy noted, there are auto bids to every Power 4 champ regardless of ranking. And then there's Notre Dame getting a guaranteed at-large bid if they're ranked in the top 12 in the final poll, which is its own form of hell. But that's neither here nor there. So, auto bids. I'm against auto bids for anyone. Literally anyone. I don't think the SEC champion should automatically be in the playoff. I don't think the Big Ten champion or the ACC or the Group of Five. No one. I don't think anyone should automatically be in. Duke would have made the playoff this year. Duke went 7-5. Backdoored their way because of tiebreakers into the ACC championship game. Won it, and they would have been in the playoff. That's a gross thought. A 3 or 4 or 5 luck. We have had conference champions with those records. They could automatically make the playoff. Oh, that's particularly gross. So I do not care for that component of the rule change, but I'm certainly glad that it's staying at 12. Now, this is one piece of news. There are also reportedly going to be further discussions about what will happen in the future. I suspect it'll expand eventually. Whether that's 2027 or 2028 remains to be seen. But for now, it stays at 12, and that's good. There are still sweeping changes that need to be made before we even discuss what I laid out in the first segment of today's show. Because next year, you're scheduled to not begin the season until after my birthday, which is insane. It starts on September 5th. The college football season has already begun on my birthday. What are we talking about here? My birthday is the 3rd of September. So the fact that it doesn't begin till the 5th, you got week 0 on the 29th, totally insane. Did the national championship feel late in the calendar to you? Buckle up for January 2025. Sorry, January 25th, 2027 is when the national championship is currently slated to be played. What are we doing? Why are we doing it? I don't know. But I hope that if changing the number of teams in the playoff was on the table, it is still feasible, and it should be because it's far enough away. We're still in the month of January, for goodness sake. It should still be feasible to move everything up. Have your national championship game be no later than January 8th. New Year's Day should belong to college football the way Christmas always has to the NBA until the NFL just kind of steamrolled its way through and took that over. But that day should belong to college football. If you want to make that your semifinals, fine. Having it be the national championship, that'd be ideal. Can that be worked out? I don't know. We'll have to see. The other conversation that gets thrown around out there is what do you do with bowl games? And there's this idea that you have to get rid of bowl games. Joel Klatt says this a lot. It's a bygone era. You're holding on to the past. You can't do it anymore. Yes, you can. There's absolutely a way. One of the most highly coveted items in the television space is live sports programming. It's one of the few things we all sit down and watch at the same time because everything else we stream, right? So you can watch it at any point in time. But a sporting event, you got to watch it right here, right now. And the college football playoff numbers really good this past year. In the playoff era, I think Indiana's game against Miami was the second most watched national championship game since they went to 4 teams. And of course, now they've had 2 years of 12. But this idea that you can't play bowl games and playoff games at the same time is just patently untrue. The limit does not exist. You don't have to. And I don't think bowl games are going anywhere. I don't want bowl games to go anywhere. Let bowl games be the appetizer every day you want to play a playoff game. Done. If kids want to keep opting out of them, fine. Somebody's going to want the opportunity to play. I can't really understand. I guess I kind of get it, but I'm just not on board with the folks that say, you got to get rid of all these bowl games. Why? Did you watch Michigan and Texas this year? It was a really entertaining football game. I think it was the day that Ole Miss played Miami. There were 3 bowl games earlier that day. It was fantastic. It was completely fantastic. Having those be an appetizer in there, if they're still financially viable, which they have to be, or else they wouldn't continue getting played. I don't know what exactly the big issue is, but yeah, it was. Hold on a sec. One moment here. On the 31st, Miami, Ohio State, that's what it was the nightcap. Before that, we watched Duke play Arizona State in the Sun Bowl, 42-39. Utah drubbed Nebraska, first game of the Morgan Scalley era. Iowa beat Vanderbilt, which was an entertaining game. Texas beat Michigan, 41-27, also really fun. And then you watch the college football playoff game. I don't see any reason why that can't happen. How is that not ESPN's dream lineup? As much college football as possible. I don't know. Only someone at ESPN can answer that question. So, anyway, end of rant for now, but this will be a recurring theme on the show. Darian Mensah, going back to Duke. Oh boy. First, this episode brought to you by our friends at Mazda. For those who show there's more to the score than what is on the screen. And let's wind the clocks back to the national championship game and Indiana needing a play. The offense stalled out, didn't like the play call there from the Indiana coaching staff on 3rd and 5, taking it out of Mendoza's hands. Miami's driving for the win, and the defense comes up with an interception. You know why? Because Indiana was one of the most detail-oriented and centric teams I can ever remember seeing. Dialing in every detail, giving it the extra fire like Fernando Mendoza shows. That grit and a never-quit mentality. That's what Fernando Mendoza was about. That is what Mazda is all about as well. They put that same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel. What it took to get there makes it count. But there's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. Check out Mazda today and understand what I'm talking about here. Mazda, there is more to you. So according to CBS Sports, Duke is seeking an out-of-court solution with Darian Mensah, which made me wonder, are they trying to get him back to Duke? Is that what that means? It's not made clear in the article. I can't imagine that that's the case. Oh, wait, on the other side of the country, that literally just happened. where Damon Williams was sued or was going to be sued. And Damon Williams was told by somebody, you might not win this one, pal, and then went back to Washington. And again, this is kind of the full circle moment on what I talked about to begin today's show. And that's that contracts have got to mean something. I mean, that's not just something that'd be good for college football. That's just a general principle in life. And going back on your word is one thing, but going back on an actual contract that you sign, I've signed a contract before. I can't fathom without good reason or for a reason that goes directly against the entity with which I signed a contract for to then go somewhere else and compete against it. That's kind of crazy. Now, this is still an evolving situation. And if I were Duke, I don't know, and the article doesn't make perfectly clear what exactly an out-of-court solution means, because Mensah is in the portal, but there was a temporary injunction issued by a judge saying, yeah, you can't enroll at another school, nor can you play football for another school or license your NIL anywhere else because you owe all that to Duke. But sure, you can enter the portal. Now, Mensah's camp has requested an expedited review of that particular order to try to allow him to transfer to Miami is the widespread expectations here. And this is one of the most consequential legal battles other than, a couple other ones. Most notably, Trinidad Chambliss. So I think it's far more likely. We should have news on that this week. That is my expectation. The Darian Mensah one, though, at the moment, scheduled to go back in court on January 29th. So that is Thursday. The show is airing on Monday. But I bet it stretches into February. It was initially scheduled to get there. They're trying to expedite it so that Mensah can go to a new school. If I were Duke in this scenario, and I'm going to go out on a limb and say Duke might have a few decent lawyers on hand that they know. If you're seeking any sort of out-of-court solution, it taps into an idea that hasn't grown. It's really just a seed right now, but it hasn't grown into a full plant in the college football, I think, collective psyche right now. The idea is if someone leaves your school to go elsewhere for more money and he was getting money at the previous school, the new school owes the old one some funds. I think that's what Duke is doing here. I think that's more likely than they're trying to actually get him to stay. Because what you're seeing amidst all of this, the longer it goes on and the harder Mensah and his camp continue to push for him to be able to leave and go to Miami, he doesn't want to be a Blue Devil anymore. He just won an ACC championship, elevated his personal and NFL draft stock for sure because of the Blue Devils program there, but he doesn't want to be there. And I get the sense there's a stronger desire for him to leave Durham than there was for Damon Williams even to leave Washington. Because Damon Williams had signed and announced he was returning with a new deal. Mensah just initially signed a 2-year deal, which he's trying to go back on and say, yeah, I want it to be a 1-year contract. I want to be able to go and play for Miami next season. It's got to be a massive weight on the minds of Hurricanes fans who were one drive from the national championship not long ago. And if he doesn't get the approval to go be a Miami Hurricane, they might not make the college football playoff. I mean, there are a lot of programs that you'd feel better about because of the quarterback situation. They'd have to figure something out. But I would suspect, this is just me guessing, but obviously I'd be willing to bet that I'm right, that Duke is trying to get financially compensated, because if they're going to be left out in the cold without having Mensah at quarterback next year, I think they probably would like to, I don't know, get something for it. At least have Miami stock their soda machines or something of that nature. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.